Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about France. To start talking about France, let's see the country profile and the preeminent characteristics of this. The territory of France and its metropolitan or continental part is located in Western Europe. France is a country with a population of around 68 million of people. France, on the other hand, is a semi-presidential republic. In this country, French is the official language and is spoken by around 95% of the population. In the case of religions, Christianity is the predominant religion, with around 68% of the population adhering to it, while Islam adheres around 9% of the population in France. On the other hand, France has been a member of the European Union since January 1st of 1958, and it has been a member of the Eurozone since June 1st of 2002. France is today one of the most modern countries in the world, and it's a leader among European nations. France plays an influential global role as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council and the NATO. It is also a member of the G8, G7, and G20 group of countries and other multilateral organizations. On the other hand, in recent decades, his reconciliation and cooperation with Germany have proven to be fundamental to the economic integration of Europe. Now, let's see an overview of some economic topics in France. In this case, we can see a comparative graph of the GDP of France and the European Union. We can see that the GDP of the European Union is around 15 billion euros, of which France contributes around 2.5 billion euros. In the case of the population growth rate, we can see that France and the European Union have followed a similar pattern and both now have an annual population growth of around 0.2%. Regarding the inflation rate, we can also see that both France and the European Union have had a high correlation, even in times like the oil crisis in the 73 or the real estate crisis in 2008. Currently, both have a similar inflation rate of around 1.5%. Regarding the unemployment rate, it can be seen that France has a slightly higher unemployment rate than the average for the European Union. In France, currently, the unemployment rate is more than 8.5%, while in the European Union is approximately 7%. In the current chart, we can see the most exported products in France, among which are transport equipment, chemical products, motor vehicles, machinery, and electronic products. This demonstrates the high industrialization of France. In the current graph, we can see the most imported products from France, among which are motor vehicles, electronic products, machinery, chemical products, and food products. The interesting thing is that the imported products are similar to those exported by France. Now, in the current graph, we can see that the countries from which France imports are mainly Germany, Italy, Spain, and Belgium. Also China and the United States. And the main export partners of France are Germany, Italy, Spain, Belgium, United Kingdom, and also China and the United States. Finally, we can see in the current graph the most influential countries in the European Union. We can see that Germany is in the first place as the most influential country in the European Union. Next, we can find France. But lately in this video, we are going to show more about this. Now, having mentioned an overview of the country profile of France, let's get into the subject and see now some facts concerning the integration of France into the European Union.
Since 1957, France has been heavily involved in defining and implementing a European development policy. Just after the signing of the Treaty of Rome, France entered a process of institutional change. De Gaulle was called back to power. a new constitutional regime was established and the African colonies were offered independence within a new organization called the French Community. In 1958, 1 year after the formation of the European Community, de Gaulle founded the Fifth French Republic. The Fifth Republican Constitution of France, and de Gaulle was its first president until 1968. The beginning of a new republic could be described as a period of hope and a vision of a new independent France, with a revitalized economy, a strong nuclear arsenal, and no need of alliances with Great Britain or the States. De Gaulle was planning to create a strong European confederation that would overcome any dependence and any need of links with the States or the Soviet Union. Free Europe, a Europe from the Atlantic to the Urals. In the days of a European community led by de Gaulle, France was the leading country among the countries that made up the community. De Gaulle's early days at the European community demonstrated his devotion to helping the community grow stronger and more cooperative. However, he kept his mode by restricting it to what he liked to call the Little Europe of Six, based on the Franco-German nucleus. His resentment of supranationalism also caused severe damage to the development of the community. De Gaulle's successor, Georges Pompidou, set a balance of power by finally allowing Great Britain and Denmark to enter the European Union, and thus to carry out the first enlargement of the European community. Only after de Gaulle retired, the community began to recover again. Since then, France has continued a process where, more recently, the French approach to European development policy has been challenged by the enlargement of the European Union and the implementation of the French bilateral and multilateral development policies. Now, let's talk about France's role in the European Union. France's contribution to the European economy and the European Union is extensive. Among these contributions, we can mention the following aspects. The globalization of corporate France is an important part of the transformation of European capitalism. In the last 25 years, a vibrant form of capitalism has emerged from the global political and economic transformations. For France, an important driving force has been the process of privatization that has changed the face of French capitalism, which has resulted in the creation of powerful international companies, well-managed, financially solid, and well-considered by the markets. Companies like AGF, BNP, EADS, Gaz de France, EDF, France Télécom, Renault. Another contribution is the attractiveness of France as a commercial location is also an important advantage for the European economy. France is a European hub for many multinational corporations. Paris is second in the world for hosting headquarters of these companies, after Tokyo and before London and New York. Therefore, Paris solidifies Europe's presence in the world. With a market capitalization of $1.4 trillion in 2006. France is fourth in the world behind the United States 9.9, Japan 2.2, the United Kingdom 2.1, but before Germany 0.8. France is also the second largest contributor to the European Development Fund, and through its contribution to the community budget helps finance other European development instruments, including the Development Cooperation Instrument, the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights, and the European Neighborhood Instrument. France also seeks to leverage Europe's funding within the framework of the Agenda for Change. It promotes the convergence of the geographical and sectoral priorities with Europe's development policy. France is thus pursuing a policy of influence and partnership so that its bilateral action and European action will complement each other. It acts as a donor and partner in the implementation of joint projects. That is, that France can influence the setting of priorities and strategies of the organizations concerned to increase the visibility and impact of ITS bilateral aid and to reach sectors of countries that are difficult to reach through isolated action. Moreover, it's a recurrent theme in France's role in Europe. Experts and policymakers across Europe see France as influential and important, but always after Germany. The German giant, it seems, cannot be outdone, despite a charming president. While France sometimes comes close to rivaling Germany, the UK's exit from the European Union has ensured there is no competition for second place. On the other hand, France has a unique historical relationship with the Council of Europe, the main organization for the defense of human rights in Europe. France has always been one of the main contributors to the Council of Europe. In 2019, it contributed more than $45 million to the organization. France has one of the largest delegations to the Parliamentary Assembly, the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe, with 18 representatives. France is very involved in the work of our organization. It has ratified 139 texts, making it one of the most widely ratified member states.
France's relationship with 27 other member states is the first priority of French foreign policy, and this is the only policy linked to the French domestic policy. But difficulties with internal structural reforms have reduced France's position within the European Union. Difficulties such as the public debt of France, which is estimated to be 90% of the total GDP, or difficulties such as the unemployment that could have risen up to 20%. The reality is that economic problems within France strengthen Germany's de facto leadership, and when it comes to financial and economic matters, France has agreed to be a junior partner of Germany. Now, there is something that we also have to mention, and that is that the United Nations Security Council is the most influential political medium and the nucleus of French foreign policy. In fact, France is one of the 5 permanent member states of the United Nations Security Council and has the right of veto. Now, making a little mention of the challenges that France faces today, we can know that France has struggled with a high unemployment since the financial crisis of 2008, just like other European countries. But while unemployment has since improved for other European nations, it has continued to affect France's productivity and competitiveness. Sustained high youth unemployment is of particular concern because it hampers skills development and wealth accumulation for the generation that should drive the economy for decades to come. Another challenge that the country has is that France has seen its competitiveness decrease. The nation has run a current account deficit for the past decade, which means that France imports more than it exports. In fact, in 2018, its current account showed a deficit of 15.1 billion euros, which has slightly better than in 2017, when its current account deficit was around 17 billion euros. Let's now also mention some challenges that France has to overcome today, and we will mention 3 of these. These are the assist in the reorganization of the European financial system, financing economic growth, and sustainable finance. Regarding assistance in the reorganization of the European financial system, for France, respecting United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union is not the same as being subject to it. This implies, therefore, reorganizing the European financial system and developing its autonomy. Indeed, it's inconceivable for France that the European financial system should depend on a financial center located outside the European Union, far from the needs of its companies and regions and from the supervision of its regulators, especially during periods of crisis and instability. Now, regarding financing European growth, it should be possible to find, create, and develop funds in France and Europe to finance innovative and growing companies. This implies making savings work more in France, with a fiscal component and with a regulatory component, such as the modernization of retirement savings and greater flexibility in life insurances. Finally, regarding the challenge of the sustainable finance, the next months will be those of ecological acceleration. This is because France has set itself the goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. This goal enshrined in Article 1 of the Energy Climate Bill that is being debated. Now, let's finally see the budgets and fundings. This led us to the question of how much does France contribute and receive? First, it's important to clarify that the contribution of each member state to the European Union budget is calculated fairly according to their resources. The bigger a country's economy, the more it pays. It's also important to mention that the European Union budget doesn't seek to redistribute wealth, but rather focuses on the needs of all the Europeans. Now, let's see the data. The total spending of the European Union in France corresponds to around 15 billion euros, which is equivalent to the 0.61% of the French economy. And regarding the total contribution of France to the European Union budget, a total of 21 billion euros is estimated, which is equivalent to the 0.85% of the French economy. The money that France contributes to the European Union budget helps to finance programs and projects in all member countries, such as road construction, investment in research, and environmental protection. In the current graph, we can see the areas to which the money contributed by the European Union to France is destined. This includes the help to smart and inclusive growth, which corresponds to the 32%. Also, we can see the help to sustainable growth, which includes everything about natural resources. This is the 64% of the investment. Also, we can see the security and citizenship area that even includes immigration, and this represents around the 1% of the expenditure. Also, we can see the administration area that represents the 3% of the expenditure. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for watching this video. See you the next time.